All right, guys, welcome back to the shop. I started installing this Rockhard 4x4 harness bar that goes to the B pillar. Anyway, I was recording that and I had some issues with my footage, so gonna have to kind of rehash what I've done. But I haven't been able to find a good video for this install on a JL. There's some out there for a JK, and I think there's a rear seat one by someone on YouTube. But anyway, the issue I ran into installing this was the distance from the outside of the mount to where these harness locators are tabbed in here on each side. Both of these were too far to the driver's side, and what that was going to do is going to have the harness kind of side loading the headrest on my stock seats. Now, I know that stock seats are not the best way to go when you're installing harnesses, but for slow trail riding and slower impact issues on the trail, this is going to be plenty safe enough. Ultimately, it's to keep you planted in the seat and not bouncing around and all of that. So I reached out to Rockhard and they were completely happy with whatever I wanted to do. They said that I could take the measurements and they would weld up a new one for me and get it out to me, or they'd refund me a little bit to kind of compensate me for my trouble here. So I'm probably just going to lop these off myself. And honestly, after looking at the headrest, the spread between the bars, I still think no matter where this is placed, it's going to want to pinch. Anytime there's going to be weight put on those harnesses or force, then I think it's going to want to squeeze the harness straps together on the headrest. So I'm probably just going to lop these off and not even worry about locating them. It's not like they can slide very far. I don't know, I might install a tab on the outside just so the harness doesn't want to eventually kind of go down the bend. But anyway, I'll kind of show you where I'm at. So basically, the main thing is you've got to pop your panel off here. You got to pinch these and pull this tab off, unbolt your seat belt, fold it down. You got to pull out this lower one first because it slides out. When you pull this out, you want to pull it straight out or you'll end up breaking a tab like I did. And then basically, yeah, it's just the 2 bolts here for the grab handle, the grab bar, and then your nut here on the seat belt. Pop that out. And what I did is, since I'm doing this by myself, I used a couple of clamps here to hold it in place and take the measurements. And then while it was in place, to make sure I got my holes right, I just drilled the top holes for now. That way I could hold them in place. But basically, you want to measure down from this point up here on the B pillar down to the top of your mount. And that needs to be 10 to 10 and an eighth. I'm right at like 10 and a 16th. So in between. But yeah, then you want to make sure obviously that it's level. So get it where you want it, throw a level on it, make sure it's level across the Jeep. And then I went ahead and drilled my hole. Now, like they stated on their website, you want to make sure that you have some really good drill bits. So I went ahead and bought this Milwaukee set here, Cobalt. And obviously you want to operate your drill in the slowest setting. They recommend like 300 RPM. That is hardened steel. It does take some time to get through it, and you will eat up some bits if you don't have, well, you're going to eat up bits no matter what, but you definitely want to not use some box store bits for that. So anyway, I'm going to put this back in there, get all the holes drilled, make sure everything lines up properly. Then I'll pull it back out. I'll lop these off, and then we'll paint. So anyway, I'll pick back up later when I'm a little further along. All right, guys, just to give you a quick update on where I'm at. You're going to go through bits. So like I said, I ordered a set of these Milwaukee Cobalt bits for hardened steel. Obviously, I'm trying to step up smaller drill bit up to the 1/4 inch hole that's required. I will say that you need to, speed is crucial here. Slower RPMs for the larger bit, a little bit faster RPM for the smaller bits. If you'll start the drill, you can actually, you know, adjust your speed based on, at least I can with my drill, on how hard I pull the trigger. But you find the sweet spot for the speed and you'll start seeing it chip off. You'll start seeing on the smaller bits, you'll actually get, you know, windings. I don't have any laying around right now, but where they kind of feed off the bit. So just pay attention to your speed. Make sure you're not going too fast. The smaller the bit, the faster the RPM you're going to want to use. You're still, obviously, you want to stay under that 300 RPM range. And then the larger the bit, the slower you need to go. So just pay attention to that. It's taking some time. I've got half the bolts or half the holes drilled. So we'll press on. Kind of switching back and forth between the smaller bits and the larger bits just to keep me centered. That larger 1/4 inch bit keeps my hole centered, whereas sometimes you'll walk with the smaller bit. It is time consuming. That's what I was talking about. When you get your speed right, that'll happen. We're almost through there. Let's make sure I'm staying centered. I like to use this as a guide because obviously this is going to keep you centered. It's going to ensure that your bolts go in. The other thing swapping back and forth allows you to do is it keeps your bits cool. Heat's going to destroy the bit. This is my first 1/4 inch bit, and this will be hole number 5, which puts me more than halfway through. I'd really like to get through this hole. That way I have less than half of the holes left with 1 bit left. We are almost there. Let that cool down. And starts to grab like that, I put it in reverse and back it out. That way I don't snap the bit off. But if it's starting to grab like that and twist up on you, just let the bit do the work. Don't put so much force behind it. All right. One more to go on this side, and I'm not gonna make you watch it. It is in. I've got all the bolts in, and now all I gotta do is clean out all the shavings. I'll vacuum those out real quick, and then we'll take it back off and be cutting these off. I actually found some PRP harness minders is what it's called, and that'll keep my harness straps from spreading, and then the headrest will keep them from sliding side to side. So Anyway, we'll get this off. I haven't decided if I'm painting it black or white. I'll make that decision and you guys will see it installed. All right, guys, I've got this thing painted up. I decided, well, you can see I've cut the tabs off I'm calling them the harness locator bars. Cut those off, got them all smoothed out. And I decided to go with a Rust-Oleum Pro Grade bed liner, mainly because it's not a real aggressive finish, but it is kind of grippy. And I figure rather than having a smooth painted surface, that'll help keep my harnesses from sliding around too much. All right, guys, finally wrapping up this PRP 4-point harness and Rockhard 4x4 harness bar install. It was a little more challenging than what I anticipated. Obviously, the harness bar bolt in pretty straightforward. Really not difficult at all, other than having to drill through this hardened steel here and just eating up bits. But the biggest issue I had, which isn't discussed anywhere that I can find, is how to mount the lap belt portion using the PRP tabs and where to mount them. So I'll show you what I did. We'll go around to the other side here. So obviously I left my OEM seat belts in just for DOT reasons. I want to be legal on the road. When they're not in use, they'll just hang back here from the bar. But after about $100 in bolts, and I'm not exaggerating, I tried a bunch of different things. I ordered some bolts specifically made for seat belts from a company out in California. They showed up, didn't work. I made an attempt to mill them down and just didn't like how they went in. So finally, I came up with this, and basically, obviously, your biggest concern is these need to be able to rotate freely. They don't have to be loose, but they need to be able to rotate once a load is applied. So hopefully you can see that. But I'll move this light here. Essentially, I'll show you on this side. It's a little easier to see, maybe. What I had to do is, obviously I had to do some clearancing. I had to trim the plastic there, but I ended up sandwiching the PRP tab, which you can see here, in between. I'm gonna block the light let me open this other door. Maybe that'll help some. But basically, I ended up sandwiching the tab between two washers and the nut. So basically, bolt comes through this side. The nut I jammed up against the tab with the washer, put the other nut with a lock washer on it, and there's another lock washer on this side, and then basically tighten this while keeping this from moving. So basically, you get it good and snug so that this tab doesn't move, and then I torque it to spec from this direction that way. So basically, I end up taking some of the load off of the tab there so that it can, rotate freely. And you can see it moves there. So anyway, there's no real instruction, obviously, on Ultra 4 cars and race cars. I mean, this is going to be bolted to a frame or the chassis somewhere. In the JL, I found that at least the section that the seats are bolted to is reinforced. If we get in an accident, it's going to be wearing the harnesses, that is. It's going to be low speed. So, I mean, hopefully no accident, but if so, hopefully it's a low speed type of tip or rollover situation where a lot of forces aren't being applied. I mean, if we're tumbling down a mountain, how much help are the harnesses going to be anyway? I mean, they may keep us in the Jeep, but you just be able to find the dead bodies easier, I suppose, if they did their job. But ended up going with longer seat bolts. I reinforced the seat bracket with a hardened steel washer, and then got a bolt that was 5 millimeters longer so that I had good thread engagement. So everything's torqued to spec. Finding the bolts and trying to figure that out, and obviously then, you know, clearancing everything. I had to, see, you can see that, I had to trim a hole in the center console there so that the, you know, the excess bolt could slide through, and actually I had to make it big enough to where the nut. So basically ended up torquing this to spec before I even bolted it to the floor. But again, this rotates, so that's what I did. All grade 8 or better bolts on everything, and yeah, we are done. So like the way it turned out. I think using the bed liner, I mean, you can check this out. It's a little bit of a sandy texture to it, so these aren't going to slide. In fact, I mean, you can't even rotate these up unless you loosen them like that, and then they bite. But between that, the headrest, you can see on that side, you know, the headrest is going to keep them from sliding side to side, and then I've got this harness minder holding each of the shoulder straps in place, so should be fine. All right, that's gonna do it for today, guys. Thanks for joining me. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you could, just like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you next time.